Well, good afternoon, everyone. Lindsay Keisler here, President and CEO of the Chamber of Catawba County. And I am so fortunate today to be joined by Aisha Adams. You guys, we met last week and became fast friends. I'm actually completely inspired by her life work and the work that she's doing, both in partnership with Lenoir-Rhyne University, but as an entrepreneur and someone that's passionate about the work of equity and diversity and inclusion. And so I'm just excited just to have a little chat today. So good to see you. So glad you're here.
It's good to see you again, and I'm so glad to be here, and I'm totally inspired by the work you're doing. You know, I believe that businesses solve problems in our community, and so you're a problem solver, and that's really important.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me give you guys a little bit of background to Aisha, and then I want to get her to give us a little bit more context as to what makes her her. So here we go. Straight from her bio, I want to share, this is just a lot, and I think it's all context that's so needed in this discussion. She's an influencer with a heart for community economic development who champions social change advocates, thought leaders, and courageous disruptors. This is my kind of person. She is the founder and CEO of Aisha Adams Media Group and partner organization Equity Over Everything, which advances equity by closing gaps in entrepreneurship and home ownership and low resource communities. She has other ventures such as the Asheville View, which is a daytime style talk show that addresses hot button issues in Asheville, where she lives. Nappy Thought, a personal blog followed by thousands of people on social media, and the Entrepreneurial Accelerator, a business boot camp that ties fledgling businesses to community resources. She's also the program developer for Lenoir-Rhyne Equity and Diversity Institute, which we're going to get into a little bit more today. She's earned her bachelor's degree in English from University of Alabama at Birmingham and her master's of science degree in adult education from Capella University. So give us a little bit more context as to what makes you you?
You know, I'm a wife, I'm a mom, a sister, and I think my favorite role is an auntie. I have a 3-year-old niece who, before we were talking, she called so that she could show me her new dance moves. Okay. So I'm here. I think that's what makes me me, because I know I have this world to prepare for my son and my niece, and I just want to see things better. So just here to build community and have fun. I want to have fun and, you know, just make our community better.
We're so similar in that way. People ask me often, what is your why? And I could list a whole list of whys. I actually get to experience a why at least once a day, right? When an entrepreneur shows up and they just need help, they need a sounding board, they don't know where to turn, that is a why. But my ultimate why, like you, is the next generation. I mean, I have two little guys that I just want them to be proud of where they grew up. And I want them to have opportunity to then come back and be able to serve our community and continue to build this community for generations. So that's really awesome. But what inspired you to get into this work in particular? DEI work.
So for me, you know, here's the deal. I worked as a teacher, I worked in corporate America, I worked in the nonprofit sector, and then as a serial entrepreneur, I understand what it means to have the right team. And so I've been obsessing over the idea of putting together just right teams throughout my journey as a leader, as an entrepreneur. And so when we started looking at teams, what occurred to me was I go to all these diversity, equity, and inclusivity trainings, and then when we get back to work, a lot of times people don't have the skills, they just have the feels about what's happening.
Skills over feels. Give me a little bit more of an example of what you mean by that. And I feel like if anyone out there who's watching this has ever experienced diversity, equity, inclusion training, you might have walked away feeling some type of way, right? Maybe inferior, an imposter. Maybe you felt a little bit bad, but maybe you walked away inspired, but you didn't necessarily know how to put it into practice. Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, you know, I remember I went to a training class, and it was at the beginning of my leadership. Like when I first became an executive, I went to a training and I was super excited because I was like, I'm going to learn to deal with microaggressions. I'm going to come back and be better for my team. And what I actually got was a historical context, which as a Black woman living in America, I didn't need the historical context because I had the present tense context.
Sure.
So I feel like that is what's happening, is that a lot of people feel like the way that we get from A to Z is to deal with our past and then our bias, and then, you know, do this internal struggle. And for me, I'm like, no, I just need to, a lot of people just need to know what to do. They've already dealt with their past. They already understand the culture. But what we need are equity advocates. We need people who are ready to push the envelope on policies, practices, procedures that change the needle. And so I felt like with a training like this, we could, you know, we can deal with bias, we can deal with the historical context, but we can put it in present day context that moves us to actually getting our work done. I was probably one of the few executives that are in the room that's saying, I love outcomes. Right?
So good. That's so
you know, so I believe in aligning organizations with stakeholders who want what's best for their team.
I like it. Action that moves the needle. So LReady, isn't that what you're calling it? LReady, for sure.
Yeah.
I love that. Lenoir-Rhyne University Equity and Diversity Institute. You then took the opportunity, you learned the feels or the skills over feels, and you said, I can do it a better way, and we can make something. And your vision is that this could be a nationally recognized, even internationally recognized institute for business leaders, community leaders, educators. So give us a little bit more information about the LReady Institute.
Yes. So I think what's important to understand is, let's back up a little bit and put some context into some of these words, right?
Right.
So first of all, let's start with the difference between an advocate and activism.
Okay, great.
So when you are talking about an activist, that's usually a person who's working outside of the system. They're performing direct action in hopes of changing something politically or socially.
Okay.
Right?
Great.
And so we have really great activists out there that are doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
But that can be kind of scary if you're a system within yourself, because you have your own mission, visions, and values. So what you actually need is an advocate, someone who works within the system, who shares your mission, vision, and values, and who has a stake in your organization, but who also wants to have and see change. And so when I designed this program, what I felt like was missing from teams was the person who had the speciality to sit in a meeting and to steer us toward diversity, equity, and inclusivity in a non-destructive way, but in a very disruptive way.
Wow, I like it. So then, creating this curriculum, you wrote it. You were the author of the curriculum. Talk about, give us some more. What is the LReady Institute? What is, credit hours? Who is it for? Give us some good context about the program.
Yeah. So once you've decided you want to be an advocate, the first thing I want you to understand is that it's a lifelong work, like being a feminist or being a mom or being a daughter. You are those things forever, and you don't get to step out of those things. And so that's what I wanted for the equity advocate. So I started to be able to begin to ask myself, how do you equip an equity advocate? What do they need and who do they need to be? So the first thing we want to understand is an equity advocate is an anti-racist person. They're a feminist. They are concerned about our veterans. They are concerned about our elderly and our youth population. They are LGBTQ allies. They are that person that is sitting at the table that is sharing with their team, this is how we untangle these complex social issues, and here's how we cultivate spaces of diversity, equity, and inclusivity. So this work is a lifelong work, just to start with. And then from there, it takes having a toolbox, right? Because if you do work, you have to have tools.
Yeah.
And so that's where the LReady program really comes into play, because it's equipping these advocates to do this work at the table with their teams. So when we think about what does that look like, the first thing I did was I wanted to create 16 hours worth of equitable leadership courses. And within that suite, that's your foundational courses that are really going to help shape your ethos. It's going to really shape how you approach the work. You leave those classes understanding where your sphere of influence is, how you plan to attack this work, and where you want to be seen within your own industry and within equity, diversity, and inclusivity work. From there, you choose a specialty, which can be education, business, or technology.
Nice.
Within those classes, that's where you're actually picking up your tools.
Right.
So if you're a small business owner or even a large business owner, you may pick that business track. Within that, you're learning, how do I market to diverse populations? How do I create a recruitment plan to recruit diverse, top-tier talent? What about my website is not inclusive? How can I change it so that it reflects what my values and morals are? Those are the kind of questions that we're answering in the Equity and Diversity Institute.
So if there's anyone out there that's like me, right, you feel that you want to move the needle and make an impact in this way. You want to create opportunity for all, an equitable environment, not just equality, but equity. But you don't necessarily know where to start. So to me, it sounds like LReady program really kind of helps you take step 2, not just step 1, but step 2. And then walk away with those, like you said, that action plan to really put into work.
Yeah. So for me, it's step 1, 2, and 3. So step 1 is being brought into the fold and really even understanding foundationally what diversity, equity, and inclusivity means. And then to see what other people in the work are doing, how they're doing it, for me is step 1. And then step 2 is, how do I equip myself? And so we're equipping others. And then step 3 is we're creating a network of equity advocates across our region to help create that change. Because in most cases, when you work for an organization or a corporation, there's a lot of partnerships. So without all of us having common language, common knowledge, common strategies, it's really hard to implement. It's hard to get along. It's even hard to communicate about diversity, equity, and inclusivity.
Yeah.
And so what we wanted to do was remove a lot of those barriers so that we could be seen in our region as the capital, the equity capital of the Southeast. We want to be seen as the place where people come to actually learn equity, diversity, and inclusivity, to train on it, and to reflect on it.
So let's go back to step 1. So talking about terminology and definitions. And I think, we throw words around often, like diversity, like equity, like equality, like inclusion. Go back, and if there's someone out there watching, what would you define the difference between diversity, equity, and then inclusivity?
I'm going to do that for you. And the first thing I want to do is I want to start with diversity, because I feel like that is when I look at equity, diversity, and inclusivity for organization, I look at it like, okay, we're diverse. Now we're inclusive. Now we're equitable. And so what I wanted to do was start with that. So we're going to start with diversity, and I'm going to give my definition, and then I'll give you an example of what I mean. So diversity is ensuring that you have a variety of backgrounds, cultures, perspectives engaged at every level of your organization. Equity advocates are the ones who measure this diversity. Equity advocates measure diversity, race, ethnicity, gender, physical and intellectual ability, religion, and sexual identity within that organization. And the equity advocate is their advocate to push through that process.
So that equity advocate really, it's like they have a lens, right? They are looking through a lens of equity. They're the ones that are responsible for ensuring that everyone, not only, it's not equal access here, it's what do we need, what adjustments do we need to make, or what concessions do we need to make in order to make sure that each person's needs are served, right?
Right. So when I talk about diversity, I really think about Angela Davis's definition, which is where my definition sprung from. But I like to think of it like this. So you have this fish tank,
Okay.
right? So the fish tank is your organization. And in your fish tank, you have a plethora of goldfish. And so the water is just the way goldfish like it. The food, top premium food for goldfish. The goldfish loves the layout of, how everything is done. But then you add a Japanese fighting fish. You add a Japanese fighting fish to the water, and in diversity, that fighting fish is still in goldfish water,
Okay.
eating goldfish food, with those extra wings, fins, just trying to get around the way the goldfish likes it. And so when you have a diverse environment that is not inclusive, that fish will not survive. That is your turnover rate, right?
Okay. So when an organization says, well, we are definitely paying attention to diversity, our hiring practices, we're an equal opportunity employer, and, we give everyone, we look at resumes, with a blind eye, but yet we want to ensure that we're collecting as many people on our team as possible that have diverse perspectives. And so look around, right? You can see we're a diverse employer, but yet turnover is high because you're saying they are trying to feed goldfish or Japanese fighting fish, goldfish food and in goldfish tank. Got it.
Right?
Got it.
So then you're like, well, I don't want my Japanese fighting fish to die, so I want to be inclusive. So when we talk about inclusion, it's authentically accepting, respecting each individual as a valuable member of the team. Inclusion celebrates difference and empowers engaged participation by giving every team member a voice in the decision-making process. And I don't know about you, but have you ever had a job where you didn't feel respected or heard or listened to? That's why you have the turnover rate. Because here you are feeding me that goldfish food. We're in this goldfish temperature when all the while I am a Japanese fighting fish. I can't even spread my fins, girl.
So if someone wants to dig deeper, obviously they need to be in the LReady program. But just my thoughts for my curiosity, if I want to take that next step, okay, I've got a diverse team by face value, right? We've created this culture that we want to be inclusive. We just don't necessarily know how to do it. What would be step one or step two for a business leader with the intention, with the positive intention?
Yeah, I think the first thing that you have to do is, listen to your staff. And what I'm seeing a lot of people do is they're simply creating these diversity, equity, and inclusivity teams, right? And so everybody I talk to, we have a team, and we put some people on the team. And as soon as I start asking them, so what are the team's metrics? What does the team plan to do? How are they going to get this done? They're like, well, they're going to make recommendations. But how can you make recommendations for something you don't truly even understand yourself? Right? So my first step is get good training. Get the type of training that allows you to really have someone in place in your organization that's making sure everybody isn't being thought of as a goldfish.
Nice.
Right?
And that's an equity advocate, right? Yep.
Yeah.
And you had told me when we talked last week, we talked about something you called an equity audit.
Yeah. So the first, to me, is you get good training, and then you have your team perform the equity audit, or you can get an equity audit and then have your team train based on the equity audit's findings. So either way works. It just depends on what kind of organization are you. Are you an inch deep organization, or are you sort of treading the water and really trying to figure out what it is where you are? So if you really want to put together a team, you can actually have them come to the become equity advocates, and then they can actually do that audit. Or you can hire a consultant to do that audit.
That's good. That's really
you
good.
know? So
Yeah.
I'm just really, for me, it's about what does the leader want to do?
Mm-hmm.
How do you want to address and show up? So
Mm-hmm.
then we want to talk about this concept of equity,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because if I'm a Japanese fighting fish and now, okay, the water's a little bit more comfortable, right? And the food is a little bit more, is a little bit better. We want to think about equity, and equity is the condition that will be achieved when all people, including marginalized populations, have access to processes, information, and financial resources. So when we were talking about this aquarium, this obviously belonged to the goldfish, right?
Right.
Even when it was inclusive, it belonged completely to the goldfish.
Even when you throw some Japanese fighting fish food and you change the water temp and maybe you add a little, environment, plant or something that makes it more appealing to them, it's still not necessarily equitable.
Right, because equity is really about access,
Mm.
access to the processes. Can we pick our food that we're gonna have? The information, why is it this temperature? What happens when it gets this temperature? And then the financial resources. I can own a part of this fish tank. It's not all the goldfish fish tank with the Japanese fighting fish just placed in there, but I have ownership at the table, at the aquarium, and I get to make decisions as well. So those are the key words that we're going to be dealing with at the Institute. And I like to use that analogy because I think most of us have had some fish before, and we know the importance of the temperature of the water. And we know the nuances of, how much to feed a person, how often to feed the fish. So we learned that either the hard way or we were great pet owners, right? Yes. And so when you start to think about how do I cultivate spaces within diversity, how do I cultivate safe spaces in my organization, you do that through diversity, equity, and inclusion. And one of the things I want to mention from our business owners here, because I don't see a lot of people talking about this, diversity has to be managed. Inclusion has to be managed. You can't just throw a whole bunch of people who are different together and expect it to be kumbaya. It's not going to happen. It will never happen. It's not even meant to happen like that.
It's really, really, really interesting. I love the analogy. Thank you for that. So talk a little bit, why, start with why. We've covered it a little bit, right? The ability to recruit and retain top talent. That's a definite why. We also talked about making sure people feel like they belong, like they're being heard, like they have a voice, like their needs are being cared for. Those are all good reasons.
Right, but there's profit, right?
Yeah.
So the research shows that if you have a top diverse team, they solve problems faster and it increases bottom line. Here in Asheville at our chamber, we found out at our last African American Business Association meeting that startups in Asheville who have women on their team earn more. What are some of the statistics happening over there with you all in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusivity?
Yeah, so thank you for that. I went through a year-long education and talent development fellowship. And I was with other chamber professionals from all over the country. And our chamber was by far one of the smallest metros that was represented. I was with major metro chambers. So they actually have, actual staff members that are dedicated to diversity, equity, inclusion programming or talent development programming. And through this, we were having great conversations around, how do you develop talent within your community? And they created these cogs, this picture that was really we considered gospel all throughout the fellowship. And it had like leadership, systems change, education, right? But the top left cog was equity. And I started thinking, we check a lot of those boxes here locally. We've got some really transformational programming in place in terms of talent development. And I started, and the other was metrics. So it's creating SMART goals around each of these areas. And that equity, it just continued to show itself and show up and fizzle up. And we had an all-day session in Los Angeles that was dedicated to equity. And equity in terms of educational attainment, in terms of employment, in terms of business ownership and entrepreneurship. So I began to ask myself questions. What is that like in Catawba County? You know, what are our statistics like? And sure enough, African American unemployment rate is 2 times that of Caucasian. Business ownership, certainly 4, 5, 6 times more for Caucasians than African Americans or any other underrepresented minority populations. Hispanic population, 7% only go on to secure education further than a high school diploma. So these are just, I mean, that just scratches the surface. And so my thought is, why not? You know, more than it's the right thing to do, morally, ethically acceptable. It's economic. It makes economic sense. It makes business sense for us. Sort of the rising tide floats all boats scenario. Why can't we create some metrics around these particular statistics and move the needle? That's where you can impact change, is targeting focus. That's equity, right? That's equity.
Right. So, definitely.
So yeah, I'm very interested in digging a little deeper, a lot deeper actually, in this particular subject, and you've helped me tremendously and inspired me to even dig further. All right, so talking about the business case, economic case, what else? You know, why is this important?
Well, I think right now the reason why, again, as an entrepreneur, I'm always looking at the bottom line. Right now, the people who are buying from you, they want to see diversity, equity, and inclusivity. They want to know how you're answering the call to COVID. How are you answering a call to the BLM protest post George Floyd? So it makes really good sense because it makes dollars, right, to do this work. Whether you're a small solopreneur or whether you are a large corporation, we are all looking for how can you bring something positive into our community. And I want to say, you know, as a developer of this program, I understand that this work takes courage. We have a course within our system called the Courage Principle. And I want to know, I understand that it is difficult. It is difficult on a personal level, that when you become an equity advocate, you may be sacrificing personal relationships. I understand that as an equity advocate, when you are working in a company and you're trying to provide that lens and you're trying to get it into focus, that people can be confused, that they can be offended, and that a lot of people aren't ready. So we've designed a course for you to kind of help you ground yourself in this work. And I always tell people, like, when my grandmother did this work, she had dogs and fire hoses turned on her. So I am definitely sure that this is a dangerous work. But I think once we, you know, come together as a community and we pull together a strong network, it becomes less dangerous. I don't know if you noticed, if you saw, but there have been some claims from the White House where they suspended all of their diversity, equity, and inclusivity classes. So just to take a diversity, equity, and inclusivity class at this time is an act of revolution.
Yeah. Yes. And that course you're talking to is called the Courage Principle. And
right.
I'm excited. I'm hoping that we could bring that before our Leadership Catawba class in a couple of weeks as well. Just like you said, taking courage, stepping out, and anytime you use the word advocate, right? That's such a powerful word. Someone that's going to stand in between and be a mediator, but also be a trailblazer to ensure that we create spaces that are safe, and again, create spaces where everybody belongs and has opportunity. All right, Aisha, give us if someone's interested in the Lenoir-Rhyne Diversity Equity Institute, how can they be a part of it? Where can they find more information? And any other sort of final closing thoughts that you have for our chat today?
Well, I've had so much fun hanging out with you today. I was looking forward to this.
Me too.
So definitely thank you for that. If you're interested in becoming an equity advocate, if you feel that this is a lens that you like to develop, whether it's for your personal life or your professional life, what I would suggest you do is to go to www.lr.edu/LREDI, and we are there to assist you. The classes can be done over the weekend. I want to say that you don't have to dedicate, we're asking for 30 man hours. So 30 hours, not even a full work week to get this equitable leadership certificate.
Right.
The classes are on the weekend, they're online. And now we are going to be instituting some Monday through Friday classes for those of you who are interested as well. So we've tried to be extremely flexible with our classes. And we're just here to help you go on your journey so that you can be the advocate that you want to be.
Love it. Aisha, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been a lot of fun, and thank you for your work, and I look forward to working with you.
Same here.